together this morning and talk about something that's incredibly important for our lives. Oftentimes we focus on truth. People need to know the truth. But actually, more importantly, we need to discover beauty in our lives. Because beauty actually gives life to the soul, and that's why I wanted to show that little video. Finding beauty is about seeing beauty in things that others don't see beauty in. So I thought about that barn in the video. It's so hilarious. We have a barn just like that. It's deep in the woods on our property, and I noticed the other day it looks like, the roof is caving in a little bit. Because old buildings, they don't last forever. They begin to collapse unless you're constantly taking care of them. But that man went into that old barn and he saw something of great beauty there because he had the eyes to see beauty. And that's what we have to do in our lives. We have to really look for the beauty. So that's what I want to talk about this morning. We've been having a series about doors, and doors are a good metaphor because they kind of open doors to opportunities that you may have that you need to step through and take that opportunity. But also doors swing inward and they allow things to come into our lives, right? So this morning I want to talk about opening that door and what can come into your life when you do so. What do we allow into our lives? They say that the eyes are the window of the soul, or the doorway to the soul. Have you heard that expression? You can look into someone's eyes and you can know what's going on. So I was thinking about this week, and two articles kind of came to me sent by people. And the first article was a rather dark article, and it was about Supermax prisons. So I don't know whether you've heard about Supermax prisons. You don't want to go to one. So they had this picture of this Supermax prison in the middle of Denver, and apparently when prisoners, the most heinous of people that commit the heinous of crimes, get flown into this Supermax prison outside of Denver, Colorado, and the last thing they see is this beautiful vista of the mountains. And believe me, that is the last thing they see. You go into this cell, and many people are confined for 23 hours in a cell. Can you imagine? And everything in that cell is 90 square foot. So imagine being in a 90 square foot space. That's not very big. That's like, 8 8, so what, 64, no, 9 9, so 81, something like that, right? So we're talking about a very small space. And all the furniture in that room is made of concrete. So you can't take it, use it, break it, anything. They have a concrete bed, a concrete chair, a concrete table. And that's the environment that people live in. They have one window, but it's way up high on the ceiling, just below the ceiling, and it's like this size. So basically people can't see out, and the only thing they can ever see is just this patch of sky. And I was wondering, could I survive in a place like that? I don't know how people do survive. In fact, many people don't survive. Because without the opportunity for beauty to come into our lives, a part of us dies. And I thought, it's interesting, our Constitution, not to get political here, but cruel and unusual punishment, I'm sure that was bigger into that. Because how do you survive when you don't have relationship with others, when you don't have the possibility to see beauty in your environment, right? So that was one article that I read, and I thought, could I live like that? What would I do? And then the second article was sent to me by a psychotherapist, a friend of mine. And it was a story of this man who's a therapist now. And his specialist in therapy is to talk about beauty. I thought, wow, therapists think about beauty? But he said the reason that he did is because of an experience that he had when he was 12 years old. He grew up in Britain. It was 1957. He was 12 years old. And he was suffering from malnutrition. In fact, he was dying from malnutrition, which seems impossible and improbable. I was alive then. I was just tiny. But that people would die in my country, in the Western world, of malnutrition. So he was on this bed, and because he was dying of malnutrition, he had a fever and he was totally listless. He couldn't move, and he said there was nothing to kind of give him sensory input. And he was in that kind of collapsed state almost. And there was a window, and through that window he could see this patch of sky, and through that window he could also see birds flying, these pigeons. And they would take off and take flight. Have you ever seen a group of birds flying in the sky? And they just make these incredible, beautiful patterns, right? And he said it was like I was mesmerized. And being 12, he said, I hadn't really thought about beauty before, but suddenly, when everything was reduced to nothing, he said it was almost like meditation. He said, I didn't know the word for meditation. But now looking back, I realized that just this, image through this window, that's all he could see. See the clouds shift, the birds come and go. It created this experience of beauty that connected him to the world and to God. That was incredible. And then his aunts came to come and visit him, and he said, I don't know if you know about Sicilian families. Well, you do, right? He said they're very hot-blooded. When they love, they love. When they hate, they hate. That's right. And he said that his mother and his sister did not relate to each other. That his aunt, his mother's sister, came in to visit him, and he was lying there listless, and then he realized, oh, this is really serious because they're talking nicely to each other. And he realized, wow, like, what's going on? How come they spoke in these soft tones and they were kind to each other? And then all of a sudden, his aunt looked at his hand and he said, Vincent has the most beautiful hands. And it kind of awoke him for a moment, because he was almost like lack of consciousness. And it awoke him, and he thought, he'd never thought about his hands as being beautiful. And then his mother said to his aunt, he does have beautiful hands. He has an artist's hands. And that awoke something in him, because he said, I never thought of myself as an artist. Now, fortunately, he did get better. And he said once he was better, by 14 years old, just 2 years later, he realized, yes, I am an artist, and I write. And he went on to create this incredible writing career. But sometimes it takes those moments in our lives where it seems like the world stops before we can come to that point where we see beauty, where suddenly something grabs us because everything else has been taken away. And we have that consciousness moment when we perceive beauty and allow it into our lives. Now, presumably, you're not in a Supermax prison, which is a good thing. And presumably, you're not really sick and lying on your deathbed, which is also a really good thing. But sometimes, it's like we are, because we allow so much stress and burden from our lives that we can't see anything beautiful around us. Have you ever thought that, my life is, ugly, dull, awful, right? Right? Because, in that moment, it's like you fail to see the beauty. You don't see that window, you don't see the pigeons, you don't see the clouds, you don't have that moment of consciousness where you can breathe in something to your soul. And this is why, if we're very serious about our lives, then we have to take time to notice the beauty. We have to consciously dig for that beauty. And I want to share a little something from Unification Thought with you, because it actually speaks to that. I'm going to show you this image which maybe you've seen before. Unification Thought proposes, actually, we were created to live a life of truth, beauty, goodness, and love. So can you just survive with your intellect and beauty? I mean, with your intelligence and truth? No. You need to have beauty coming into your life, because it's only the relationship between love, centering on love, that beauty and truth combine to create goodness. When we think about beauty, we often think of a painting or a beautiful image, right? But there's also beauty in sacrifice. When we see, people running out of a burning building holding a kid, that is also beauty. And what does it do? It creates goodness. So for our lives for us to be fully alive, we not only need truth in our lives, but we also need beauty. And together, love, beauty, and truth create and manifest goodness. This is why Unification Thought is such a powerful tradition for us to understand. And I began to think about beauty and ask myself, do I really notice it around me? Do I allow it to feed my spirit? Because every spirit needs fed with beauty. And I found this beautiful quote from a sermon by Reverend Moon. He said, art is like a flower for our mind. It blossoms and penetrates its fragrances throughout our lives and society. The beauty of art connects all people through their hearts. You know, if you're talking about truth, truth can never unite people because they always have their own experience of the truth or their own understanding of truth. But actually, art has the ability to unite people because we can recognize what is beautiful in that art. Or have you ever seen anyone argue about a sunset? You know, I don't think that sunset's quite beautiful, right?
It needs something.
It needs something more. Or, you know, but nobody ever argues like that about the beauty that we see in nature. We all recognize it resonates with us because we were created to receive and perceive that beauty. So while people may argue about ideas, when it comes to beauty, people won't argue. Now we're very fortunate to have several photographers in our community. We have Cheryl, we also have Jenny, who posted some beautiful pictures last week of her trip down to Florida. They went down to Florida, and she had all these, every day there would be another incredible image, and many of them were of nature, right? But also we have Terumi's husband, Maso. He's a photographer, and he's a brilliant wedding photographer. He photographed my daughter's wedding, so I'm a little bit biased there, because he created these beautiful images. But beauty is very, very important to him, because he said that in putting that composition together, you arrange it, you don't just reveal an image, but you reveal the truth in the image. You reveal the beauty in the image. You reveal the goodness in the image. And this is a picture of a wedding that he sent me that he took recently, and he said, I love this picture because it shows the relationship between the bride and the bridegroom. It reveals the beauty of love. But it's also, you know, put against the backdrop, which has the stone and the wood there. And he said, you know, our environment should support the beauty that we create in our lives. I realized actually he has a very deep understanding. He's not just going and taking photographs of people, but he's really trying to perceive the beauty in that moment so that he can tell that story later. And this is another picture of an engagement that he was invited to come and photograph and see all those beautiful flowers. And he said that humankind was given this backdrop of nature to live in so that we could actually discover love and we could discover truth and beauty and goodness, right? He said, I'm inspired by nature or imperfect backdrops like the weathered stone or the wood, and using it as a backdrop for people and for life. So our spirit is stimulated by beauty. And I have a beautiful quote from the poet Rumi. He said, that which God said to the rose and caused it to laugh in full-blown beauty, he said to my heart, and it made it 100 times more beautiful. Isn't that beautiful? It's just like God brings forth incredible beauty in the environment that he created, the flowers and the trees and just everything. So he wants to speak beauty into our heart that our lives can manifest beauty too, right? You know, people often say that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I didn't put that up here, sorry. But he said, and so some people think, well, that's limiting because beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But the gentleman who wrote this article, he said, no, it's not. He said, I say it's the most liberating thing about realizing that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, because this empowers us to find beauty in places where others haven't dared to look, including inside ourselves. I'd like to invite up Kim, who's an artist, because I thought, why am I speaking about beauty? I am deeply unqualified. But I know that Kim finds beauty in the environment, and I feel that when I walk into his house, which is different from walking into my house, because I see the arrangement of color and everything, and I realize that he loves his environment because he finds beauty in it. So I'd like to invite Kim to come and talk a little bit about his experience with art and painting.
There's truth, there's beauty and goodness, all these things kind of evoke God's love. So after I heard the Divine Principle, it was so powerful for me and so enriching, and definitely truth is still on that page. But I really felt deeply like, given my own gift, what does that really mean in terms of what I give back to the world and give back to God? And I thought deeply about that. And this first image represents, in many ways, like a painting that kind of evokes the past and at that time, the present. My favourite artist is Vincent van Gogh, was famous for sunflowers. So I really connected to Van Gogh deeply, and Van Gogh really witnesses to the beauty of the world, and also has that spiritual root of love for God. He was a very spiritual man, very religious man. He was a minister for a time. So he had that truth, beauty, goodness kind of mindset. And so I felt personally, given people's response to truth, as Heather's described beautifully, some people are ready and some people are not ready, and you get all sorts of responses like, I don't need it, when you look at them and think, you really do need it. But meanwhile they're walking away, so what do you do now? So I really felt my calling was to sort of evoke beauty as another way of sort of expressing love and truth, because they work together, truth, beauty and goodness. They're really on the same page, same team, but they have different roles. And beauty in many ways evokes the future, even though we can't be there yet, meaning the ideal. But it may take us 2,000 years to get to the ideal, hopefully a little shorter than that. Otherwise. But the thing is, that tree outside the window is going to look exactly like that tree in the ideal world in 2,000 years' time. That rose will be in that garden in the ideal world. So if you really understand this, then beauty and the creation and nature is actually an immediate bridge to the ideal, which is the truth. So beauty can witness to the truth when the truth is just turned into yucca, 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 and people tune you out. Then beauty comes in and just embraces and said, calm down, and brings in another reality. This was a few years later, and on my artistic journey, and this is called Boston Spring, and I went to the gardens in Boston, and I just love. You took many times, so that without realizing, you spoke about the sky. The sky evokes so much unspoken power, and then when you have flowers that have give and take, but the sky speaks through the flowers, and the flowers speak, and the beauty is a creation larger than the parts. Then it evokes reflection and calm, so you can actually calm down, and then just when we calm down, then we can feel God. God is not just out there, so you can think all I'm talking about is out there, but actually God is in here. But to feel it, you have to calm down. You have to calm down, and to calm down, sometimes we need something to catch us and pull us and bring us and help us chill. And so beauty has that. It's not just like second-rate fiddle. Oh yeah. It's the real deal, and we're on equal footing. So the next one. So this is a Bird of Paradise, and I love this title because Bird of Paradise. I'm not seeing the bird. Where's the bird? Where's the bird? Where's the bird? There's no bird there. This is a flower. One of the messages of the beauty and nature and everything like this is it's not a literal thing. It's symbolic. And I just want to briefly, and I'm really trying to be brief, this is my artist statement. I paint from the heart and I teach from the heart. In my artwork, I try to capture a hidden quality I perceive in God's creation. The heart that is expressed in every leaf, blade of grass and flower. Not in a detailed, literal way, but in a way that communicates emotions. And what are those emotions? So the external is testifying to something invisible, And the emotion, the essential emotion, is true love, which is the essence of the truth. The truth testifies to love. But words, after a while, you don't even hear. You know, I could say there's $500 under each of your seats. If I said this after talking for 3 hours, no one will look under their seat. Because words, after a while, just go on and on. So beauty comes in. And so the bird of paradise is not a bird, but it's not a flower either. This is actually a love letter from my heavenly parent. It's a love letter. All flowers are love letters to us, to our soul. Nature is God's love letter. And when we really get on that wavelength, then you can feel God. And God is out there, but God is in here too. So you'll, as that song testified, the beauty is out there. When we know it's out there and in here, then we're making progress. Until then, you are in kindergarten. You're in spiritual kindergarten till you know that God is inside and outside. Last one. This is the last one. This is Hampton Beach. Once again, you know, especially going out into wide open spaces, you can really feel Heavenly Parent and the beauty, and then once again evoking space within, giving space to Heavenly Parent, giving space to love, giving space to beauty, giving space to belief. Sometimes we don't believe and we constrict, but then if you go out into space, then you can kind of. So all these things, as I said, are not literal. They're not. I'm actually an abstract artist. Would you believe? I'm not remotely interested in flowers or rocks or anything from a scientific point of view beyond a certain point, but it's what they evoke and the bridges into beauty, to beauty, and then the beauty testifies to the truth and goodness. Everyone wants to be a good person, right? So beauty testifies to truth and goodness, but ultimately true love. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. So I want to ask you an important question before you go home today. What is the beauty in your life? What beauty do you see within yourself, as Kim said? Or what beauty do you see in your spouse? What beauty do you see in your children? And it's not just a question of acknowledging, oh yeah, they're beautiful, but it's being able to look into the details of that. Just like in a painting, you look into the detail of the painting, the color, the hue, what it evokes for you. But actually we need to look into each other's hearts and lives and ask ourselves, what's the beauty inside of that person, or what's the beauty inside of my environment? You know, many years ago I used to commute down to New York City, and sometimes I would take the bus, and the bus would go through Harlem. And it's such a shocking, stark environment to see the projects and these just tall apartment buildings, and you know, especially in the winter, everything would just be kind of like gray. And I thought, oh, how can you live in this environment and find life? But I realized you have to find the beauty. Even in that environment, you can find beauty. And that's why I like Humans of New York. You know, they post these images, because actually those humans of New York express something beautiful they find about living in New York, which other people might think, well, that's not a beautiful environment. But the posts show the beauty that they discover because they look for that beauty. And the psychotherapist who wrote the article that I referred to prior, he said, well, it's difficult to define what beauty is because different people find so many different beauties. The experience of beauty is not as hard to define, which is one's soul and one's world are connected in engagement of wonder. And that's why you see an incredible sunset, you see an awesome painting, or I have to say the music that we heard this morning from the violin before, you know, we sat down, is just so incredibly beautiful that it resonates with you, and actually it connects you to each other, but it also connects your heart to God. And I realized the purpose of beauty is not just that we think, oh, that's beautiful, but it's that we can be connected within ourselves and actually to each other and to God. That is the purpose of beauty. And I found this quote from a sermon from Reverend Moon. He said, "Listen to the sound of the cicada. When it sings, all other creatures sing along with it. No orchestra on earth can compare to the orchestra of nature. A bird in flight, a butterfly, or a bee, the flowing streams and the towering mountains know that each is God's creation and a manifestation of God's inner heart." That's why we seek beauty, because we want to know what is God's heart. Just as Kim said, you see a flower, inside that flower is God's heart. What is that saying to me? How does that resonate? What does it communicate? Which is really beautiful. So I want to ask that this week, wherever you go, you look for beauty. And there's a wonderful Navajo saying that guides us in that respect. It says, beauty is before me. Like, look for the beauty wherever you go. Even if you're going into the workplace and you think, I don't want to be here, which happens every Monday morning, but look for the beauty, right? Or look for the beauty behind me. What am I leaving behind? Who's behind me? The beauty below you, above you. And it says, I walk in beauty. When you walk in beauty, you walk with God. So sometimes people say, well, how do you connect to God? How do you live with God? You live with God when you walk in beauty. And just as Kim said, beauty is nature is the connection to the ideal. It's already perfect. So if we think, well, where's the ideal world around us? Just go out in nature, see beauty, look at art, right? Beauty is a revolutionary idea, because beauty may be the link to that ideal, as Kim was saying. And I want to just look at a quote from Peace-Loving Global Citizen. People often think that politics moves the world, but that is not the case. Look at communism. It thought it was going to change the world. And 70, 80 years later, it collapsed. It's culture and art that will move the world. It's emotion stimulated by love, beauty, and goodness, not reason, that strikes people in the innermost part of their hearts. When hearts change and are able to receive new things, ideologies and social regimes can change as a result. So in other words, what's the stimulus for that? The stimulus is when the heart is touched. How is the heart touched? The heart is touched through beauty, through art and culture. And this is why art and culture are so important. We can't just, live, by societal regimes or whatever. So this week I want you to think about your life. Where can you find beauty? And when you find beauty, you will also find God. Please join me in prayer.